The morning the car finally died, it felt like the world had decided to test how much pain one man could carry without breaking. The engine coughed, shuddered, and went silent in the gray half-light before sunrise, leaving a single father standing on the roadside with cold air biting his face and fear tightening his chest. That old car had been his last shield against a life that never stopped demanding more than he had to give. And now, even that was gone. Before the story pulls you any deeper, pause for just a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles that happen when hope feels impossible, please like this video, share it with someone who needs faith today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Daniel Carter was 36 years old and already felt decades older. Life had carved lines into his face that sleep could not erase. 2 years earlier, his wife had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm, leaving him alone with a 7-year-old son named Noah and a silence that never stopped screaming. Daniel worked nights at a warehouse, lifting boxes until his arms shook, then cleaned offices during the day whenever he could find extra hours. He slept in fragments, always listening for Noah's breathing, always afraid of what would happen if he failed even once. The car, a rusted blue sedan with a cracked windshield and a door that only opened from the outside, was the thread holding everything together. It took Noah to school, took Daniel to work, and carried groceries, dreams, and exhaustion all at once. That morning, Daniel was supposed to take Noah to the train station. Noah had been accepted into a free science program in another city, a rare opportunity that could open doors Daniel had never been allowed to knock on. The ticket had taken months of saving, skipping meals, selling old tools, and swallowing pride. The train was the only affordable way. Missing it meant losing the chance entirely. When the car died, Daniel felt something inside him collapse quietly, the way buildings do just before they fall. He tried everything he knew. He opened the hood even though he barely understood engines. He whispered prayers he hadn't said since his wife's funeral. He pounded the steering wheel until his hands hurt. Nothing worked. The sun climbed higher, and the time on his phone slipped away like water through his fingers. That was when Daniel made the decision that felt like cutting off his own arm. He would sell the car. Right there. As broken as it was. It was the only thing of value left in his life. He pushed the car down the street, sweat soaking through his shirt, until he reached a small used car lot that looked as tired as he felt. The owner barely glanced up before shaking his head. The car wasn't worth much, especially not broken. Daniel accepted the offer anyway, because desperation leaves no room for negotiation. The money he received barely covered the train ticket and a cheap bus ride back home. As he walked away, he looked back once, watching the car sit alone under a faded sign, and felt like he was abandoning an old friend on the side of the road. Daniel bought the train ticket with shaking hands. Noah clutched his backpack, eyes wide and hopeful, unaware of the weight his father was carrying. At the station, Daniel smiled through the ache in his chest and told himself that sacrifice was what love looked like. When the train pulled away with Noah on board, Daniel stood there long after it disappeared, praying he had made the right choice. What Daniel didn't know was that fate had been watching quietly. Across town, a man named Richard Hensley sat in the back seat of a black luxury car, scrolling through emails he didn't care about. Richard was a billionaire, a name whispered in business magazines and boardrooms, known for building an empire from nothing. But money had not protected him from loss. His only son had died in a train accident years earlier, and since then, Richard had been drifting through life, rich in wealth and poor in purpose. He had returned to this city on a whim, drawn by memories he couldn't outrun. Traffic slowed near the used car lot, and something made Richard look out the window. He saw the old blue sedan, hood open, paint peeling, sitting like a forgotten relic. For reasons he couldn't explain, his chest tightened. He remembered teaching his son to drive in a car just like that. He remembered laughter, scraped knees, and promises of a future that never came. Richard asked his driver to stop. He walked onto the lot, ignoring the puzzled stares, and asked about the car. The owner shrugged and told him about the man who sold it that morning, how desperate he had been, how he'd needed money for a train ticket for his kid. The words hit Richard harder than any headline ever had. A single dad. A broken car. A train ticket. The universe seemed to press on his shoulders, urging him not to walk away. Richard bought the car on the spot. Then he did something that stunned everyone around him. He asked the owner to find Daniel Carter and told him to offer $1 million for the car. Not as charity. Not as publicity. But as a transaction that could not be refused. When Daniel received the call, he thought it was a cruel joke. He almost hung up. But something in the voice on the other end made him listen. He returned to the lot, heart pounding, mind racing with fear and hope colliding. When he saw Richard standing there, calm and composed, Daniel felt very small. He didn't understand why someone like that would care about someone like him. Richard explained without speeches or grand gestures. He spoke of loss, of sons, of trains, of regrets that never sleep. He said the car was priceless to him, that it carried a story worth more than money. Daniel stood there, stunned, tears blurring his vision, as the check was placed in his hands. $1 million. For a car that had barely made it through one more morning. Daniel's life didn't change overnight in flashy ways, but it changed deeply. He paid debts. He moved into a safe home close to Noah's school. He went back to school himself, studying engineering, inspired by the son who had believed in science and possibility. He set up a small fund to help single parents with transportation, because he knew how fragile life became without it. Most importantly, he learned to breathe again. Richard didn't disappear either. He stayed in touch, not as a savior, but as a witness. Watching Daniel rebuild something from ashes helped heal a part of him he thought was gone forever. He donated the old blue sedan to a small museum, not because it was beautiful, but because it represented the quiet heroism of ordinary people. Years later, when Noah graduated and stood tall with confidence in his eyes, Daniel remembered the morning the car died and realized it had never really been the end. It had been a doorway disguised as loss. Some miracles don't arrive with thunder. They arrive when everything breaks, and someone chooses to see value where the world sees scrap. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach people who are struggling in silence. And before this story ends, we ask you from the heart to comment below and tell us what part of this journey moved you the most, because your words might be the encouragement someone else needs today. Daniel Carter once sold his broken old car for a train ticket, believing he was losing the last thing he had. What he gained instead was proof that kindness still lives in unexpected places, that sacrifice is never wasted, and that sometimes the smallest acts of love echo louder than $1 million ever could.